Reader comment, a little off topic. I read a book by a female private investigator from Australia, who specializes in infidelities investigation. As part of her investigation, she always asked her client to describe the suspected cheater. Invariably, the betrayed spouse gave some glowing description of a veritable Adonis or Venus raving about the cheater's desirability, etc. When the private investigator would actually see the person or get a photo, she was gobsmacked. The cheater was ordinary at best. She hypothesized about why this kept occurring. Eventually, she concluded that like you, many of these betrayed spouses had been in dysfunctional or abusive marriage for years. They were beaten down and had lost self-respect such that they perceived the cheater as being superior to them, especially in the looks department. I bet none of us would be terribly impressed by your wife's appearance and alleged youthful looks. I have a good friend who is married to a complete narcissist woman. He goes on about how at 65 she could pass for 40. This woman is a hag and looks older than him. Original poster, I respectfully disagree. She constantly gets hit on from all ages and would have had a modeling career had her parents not stepped in, but there is a chance that you might be right. Reader comment, my god man, there's cheating and then there's assault on humanity, and your wayward wife actions fall into the latter category. What she did to you is shocking, horrifying. If I understand correctly, she denied you sex for 2 years. You have really been celibate for that long because your wife wouldn't sleep with you. She had an affair that spans for almost 6 years with a married man who offers her the divine position of wife number 2, and she considers it. And you don't recognize that her behavior towards you is despicably hateful. And she now wants to reconcile, but not until she closes things off properly. With this other POS, who is probably bumping wives 3-4 into the 2-3 configurations, and now you're jacked and have so much to offer to women who won't steal half your life away in the most disrespectful manner imaginable. Original poster, as sad and almost funny as it is. At the same time, you hit the nail on the head, with respect to him being a bad Muslim. He is a selective Muslim, but I falter. First and foremost, she should have known better. He also drinks alcohol and smokes from time to time. I have also narrowed down the list of people who could be his wife to only 3. Reader comment, I think you've got a great handle on the situation. I will caution you that meeting up in person to break up is almost always one or more of the following. 1. A goodbye sexual tryst. 2. A final reminiscing of good times. 3. An opportunity to say goodbye for now, and wait for me. 4. An opportunity to plan an exit to the betrayed spouse's marriage. 5. An opportunity to take the affair further underground with a burner phone and email address, social media account. You don't know about etc. Since she plans on meeting up with him, plan on divorce her immediately. Otherwise, you're allowing her to at minimum get one goodbye tryst with your permission, and no one wants that. Original poster, I think you are right. I just got off the phone with her and it wasn't good. I questioned her about something I think she lied about. She said, just because she can't prove, it doesn't mean she isn't telling the truth. Then she flipped it and asked, how do I know you deleted all the recordings like you said? And I replied that, remember, you are the one who is untrustworthy here. She asked why I am bringing this up. I thought you wanted to reconcile, and this doesn't help. She started to blame shift and said I needed to go get professional help. I said, hold on. You are the cause of this and now you don't want to hear any of it. The reason I have these thoughts and feelings are as a result of your actions. She didn't want to hear it and hang up on me. Interesting. The recent comments about narcissism and especially covert narcissist. I'm actually listening to a podcast right now with someone who is an expert in personalities, and he is describing covert narcissists, and she has almost all of the traits. Reader comment, well, once again she has chosen her other husband over you and her children. Why can't you expose her ways to her family and your children? Why does everything have to be done her way? No contact from now on, let your legal team do the talking for you. Once they are engaged, move her things out of the bedroom while she meets this fellow. Keep a voice-activated recorder on you at all times. Keep the recordings out of the house. She wants to and needs to be in control. There is no chance for reconciliation with this woman. She is his number 2 wife already. Let his other wife know, ASAP, one day at a time. Original poster, one step at a time. This took 6+ years and can't be undone in one night. When looking at definitions of covert narcissist, there are 2 traits that are part of NPD that doesn't fit her. She has loads of empathy for people and she has no problem developing and maintaining relationships. Everyone wants a piece of her and her time, She has even gone as far to tell me about many times over the years, including recently, that everyone wants what I have, except she doesn't realize, I do not have her and haven't had her in 6 years. Update: so, my son came visiting this weekend. We have a big house, and his room was far enough from ours, but he managed to hear me and my wife arguing. We had a big blowout because she got home during lunch and then told me the AP called her out of the blue as he is back in the country and has quarantined, and only has 1 to 2 days before he must leave to join his family. So, he wanted to see her. She already had plans with a girlfriend of hers, which she had to change. So, I'm thinking this scumbag calls you out of nowhere and you drop everything on a dime. That really got to show me how much respect I have lost in this relationship. She told me that she was being transparent, and she didn't want to hide it from me. I told her that she already knows my opinion on that matter, and I want her to block his number and go no contact. She said after today it would be over, and I should trust her to end this her way this last time. She said she voluntarily informed me in the spirit of transparency, and they would be meeting at a public restaurant, and she would end it there. I completely ignored her and walked off the room. While she got ready to leave the house, I went downstairs to the living room as I was about to sit down. My son walked up to me and told me that he overheard me and his mom arguing and was wondering what it was about. He said, normally, he wouldn't care, but have noticed that we have been arguing a lot more than usual. At first, I didn't want to get my son involved. I didn't want my children to take sides because that is something my conniving wife would do, not me. But at this point the cat is out of the bag. I felt like my son is old enough to be a father and he is old enough to know. Moreover, he is going to find out sooner or later and I better get a jump start on it before she twists it around on me. I sat my son down and told him everything. I didn't pull any punches. I cut deep enough by telling him that 6 years ago, I told him that she planned on abandoning us to be the second wife of a Muslim man she was having an affair with. I was shocked to find out that my son wasn't surprised. My son had suspicions of his own. He told me that he had suspected that she may have been having an affair for years, because years ago he noticed Ahmed picking her up at unusual times and she would say that he was a colleague of hers at the charity and dad introduced him to her, and he took it as they were business partners. Like I said earlier, she always knew the right things to say. I couldn't believe how well I bonded with my son over these few minutes of conversation. He had so many stories to tell about his suspicions. We may have spoken for about an hour or so. Before I heard the garage door open, my wife was heading out. I remember she told me that she was meeting Ahmed at a restaurant. I told my son that she is on her way to meet him in order to break off the affair once and for all. At that point, I haven't had the chance to explain everything to him. My son is not like me. I am mild-mannered, introverted and level-headed person and my son is completely opposite. When he was younger, he would get in trouble at school so many times, his mom would defend him back then, and he had a close bond with her, but when he started getting older, he began to prefer my company more. I never took notice, but he was starting to realize how manipulative my wife was. I was surprised about how much he knew her manipulative nature. He is more aware and savvier than I was. I would say he got his intelligence from me, but his savviness is from his mom. He suggested to me that we tail his mom and see if she does what she said she was going to do. I am almost embarrassed to admit now, but I would later find out that my son felt sorry for how his mom treated me during our relationship and how much control she had over me. As soon as my wife drove off, we followed her with my son's car because we felt like she would easily recognize my car. We caught up to her at a red light as we were 2 cars behind her. It was around 5 p.m. at this time, and it was almost sunset. So, it will be getting dark soon. My wife dropped by a strip mall and entered a hair salon. Me and my son parked nearby, as I continued to speak to him about how I discovered about his mom infidelity. As I spoke to him, I noticed that at some point he wasn't making eye contact, he was just looking straight at the windshield. I knew he was upset because his face was all red. I should have noted this as a sign for things to come. I should have stopped at that point because he had a bit of an anger problem, but I continued. By the time she came out of the salon, it was almost past 7 p.m. Her hair was all done, she looked prettier than ever. I don't remember the last time she looked this good for me. You don't get your hair done this good to meet up with someone you are supposed to break it off with. Even my son said, so she is getting all ready for him, isn't she? I responded by saying, son, you see what I have been dealing with. I felt really uncomfortable watching my son notice these things because I knew that I'm destroying the relationship he had with his mom, I knew from this day he would look at her differently. I wasn't proud of it, but I felt like I was dealing with the card that I have been dealt with. I didn't choose to cheat, I didn't choose to pick a strange man over my family. I didn't choose to be selfish. She did, let alone, not me. I feel like my son deserved to know and my other children deserve to know that their mom chose this strange man over them. After she was done, she went into her car and started heading out of town. We were 1 or 2 cars behind her. She drove to a restaurant about 35 minutes drive. We parked a few rows away from her as she walks out of her car and greeted Ahmed. They hugged and kissed each other on the cheek like lovers that haven't seen each other for a while. It was dark at that point, but there was enough light to see the smile on both of their faces. At that moment, it was clear as day that this was not a breakup meeting. She hasn't been this excited to see me before. I took out my phone camera and recorded the entire disgusting display of affection. They went into the restaurant holding hands momentarily. You couldn't even tell they were both married. I felt sick to my stomach. At this point, it was obvious that she was Ahmed's second wife and has been fooling me for 6 effing years. After they went in, my son wanted to go into the restaurant to see what was going on. But I know him well enough to know that he would cause a scene at a public place. So I told him not to, true to my cautious nature. I told him that we got all the evidence we need. I told him that I was glad that he was able to witness the kind of woman his mom is from by himself. I thought to myself that at least I have an ally in this fight, in case this witch tries to turn it around on me. My son really wanted to get out of the car and confront them at the restaurant, but I stopped him as I was trying to convince him to stay in the car. Suddenly we noticed both of them coming out of the restaurant. They must have stayed for about 15 minutes. I was expecting them to be there longer than that. They slowly walked to my wife's car. He opened the door for her. She entered, and he leaned in, I'm assuming to kiss her. Then he shuts the door, then went straight to his car and drove off. My wife waited in her car for about 10 minutes or so before she drove off. Well, I thought the day was over. We were going to meet up with her at home. So, we decided to follow behind her. We were even discussing how to confront her when we get home. But we noticed that she took a detour that wasn't close to the direction of my house. We decided to follow her. She led us to a hotel outside of town. She parked, prepped herself in the mirror and headed inside the hotel. We looked around to see if Ahmed was at the lobby, but we couldn't see inside the hotel lobby. My son pointed out that Ahmed's car was already in the parking lot. We looked inside the car from where we were and it appears that he was not in the car, so he must have been waiting for her in the hotel lobby or have already booked a room. This couldn't have been going any better. My son wanted us to wait for them in the lobby so we could confront them, and I agreed with him this time. When we got to the lobby, there were no security, just a front desk attendant. It was a small hotel. She asked us if we needed help on anything and we told her that we are waiting for a guest that would meet us in a few hours or so. We waited. We went to the corner and waited. We were so anxious that we didn't even sit down or spoke to one another. Every few minutes the elevator sound goes off and we look with anticipation to see if it was them. I knew she wasn't going to be at the hotel all night, because I knew she planned to meet up with my daughter later that evening. At this point I have replayed everything in my head. Once they come off the elevator, I will get my chance to confront them. She would know that I have caught them red-handed, my son would be my witness, and we would go home. I would get my divorce, she would be exposed, end of story. But boy, was I wrong. An hour or so later the elevator sound came on. My son was nowhere to be found. Before I could react, my son was already on top of Ahmed, grounding and pounding this man as my wife was screaming on top of her lungs, and trying to pull my son from on top of Ahmed, as my son was now shouting explicit words at my wife, calling her a whore and kept threatening to kill him. I looked back at my wife as I was dragging my son out the hotel door. She was in shock. She was going back and forth, not sure if to go after us or to check on Ahmed, now all bloodied up rolling on the floor. We couldn't stay there because I knew that somebody must have called the police by now. My son is taller and bigger than me, so it was a struggle controlling him, but I still mustered the strength to drag him to his car. I took the keys and got ourselves out of Dodge as fast as we could before the cops shows up. On our way home, I should have been yelling at my son for overreacting and almost killing a man. I should have told him that I am worried that the police may come for us because I believe the lobby had security cameras, and Ahmed could press charges, etc., but instead I didn't say a word to him. In my mind I wanted to thank him for reacting the way he did. The look on the face of Ahmed was a look of terror, and I would pay anything to get the satisfaction I felt from seeing my wife's reaction. I know she is shell-shocked and an altered terror at the moment, but tonight couldn't have gone any better. If my son didn't look like me, I would have said he wasn't mine because he did something that I was too much of a coward to do. When we got home, I felt like we bonded more than I have ever bonded with him before. I was more confident that come tomorrow morning, I will be calling my lawyer to begin the divorce proceedings. My wife did not come home that night. Knowing her, she would be embarrassed out of her mind. She must be somewhere plotting how she could lie her way out of the situation now that my son knows everything, and the violence that took place at the lobby is all her fault. It wouldn't be long before my daughter and everybody else know as well. The night couldn't have gone better.